Hey everybody, welcome to Vology's WireSide Chats. I am your host, Neil Terracciano. I have two esteemed guests with me here today to discuss the topic that you may have heard about in the last few weeks to months, maybe even a year, about the 2003 Windows Server 2003 end of service announcement. If I may, we're going to jump right into this. I have one of our valued guests. She's a veteran of WireSide Chats. Carrie Farrington, who works the service desk, plays a leadership role there from a Microsoft perspective. I can certainly tell you that she's probably knows a little more about Microsoft than most people who work at Microsoft. So we're very excited to have her here with us today to discuss some of the issues that may arise if we procrastinate a little longer with this one. I also have with me Steve Deming from Microsoft itself, another veteran of WireSide Chats. Again, very excited to have Steve here. We always end up with some very valuable conversation as a result of his dialogue. So if I may, I want to direct back to you, Carrie. So I think we're about a year or so away from the end of service announcement, and I think the most important question that our viewers are going to have, especially the audience that is watching WireSide today, what are the implications? What are the problems that we can see in our sort of at the end of the path here for 2003, Server 2003?
Some of the implications our businesses are going to run across are, for one, there's at the end of support, there's no more security, there's no more patches that are going to be available for 2003, which can cause security holes in the future for them.
So the 2003, how old is 2003? Let me do the math. 2014 minus, so we're about 11 years old?
Yep, you're going about 11 years old operating system here.
So probably not much to change on that, right? I mean, 11 years, it's been well baked. We don't have any updates for that, right?
Well, actually, this year alone, they've done 37 patches. Operating systems always go through updates and always are going through patches with security. And unfortunately, with the end of support, this is going to eliminate those patches and open up security holes. And not only are there updates going to stop on security, you're also going to have updates not available for your Java or Internet Explorer. Anything that some of your applications may require will no longer also be updated. Therefore, your applications may not run in your business. Workstations may have limited features that won't be able to be used with 2003 anymore. So there's a lot of things that can implicate from the application side to the hardware side to security side of not upgrading.
So lots of implications, more than I think we're used to seeing from Microsoft. One of the reasons we brought Steve on with us is because of Steve's depth of knowledge. So Carrie, thanks for your answers. I'm sure we'll have a few more questions for you. But Steve, let's point this one at you. So is this another conspiracy theory from Microsoft to force everybody to upgrade to the latest 2012? I know that this is something we talk and joke about a lot, but in this case, there seems to be some real implications, as Carrie pointed out, but also there are some other things worth discussing as far as why this one is so important. Do you have some color you could add on that one?
Well, so, I mean, there's several ways we can go in this, why it's so important. I mean, first of all, I want to make sure that we recognize that because we're calling it an end of support, we are really trying to frame this up to make sure that businesses understand that, as Carrie pointed out, we're not going to be releasing new patches, we're not going to be releasing new updates, and because it's end of support, what does that imply to your business from a compliance point of view? In other words, end of support means that Microsoft's no longer doing these patches. A lot of organizations that are in regulated industries, healthcare, financial, government, education, legal, these organizations, as part of their regulatory compliance, need to operate on supported operating systems. And so end of support can really put some of that regulation, that certification in jeopardy. So I want to make sure that's very clear to your customers.
That's a good point, Steve. You know, Carrie, you run the service desk for Vology. You're one of the leadership there that is really in the trenches when it comes to Microsoft. I know we have customers that are regulated, right, to some degree. So do you expect to see a little bit of procrastination and maybe in 6 months we're redesigning some major server infrastructures in a pinch? And what do you have some advice you would give to an IT manager from the service perspective?
Yeah, due to security audits alone and compliances, like he said, that you have to follow your company's compliances, and if you wait to the last minute, you can get hit with fines if you're not in compliance with healthcare or your financial. There are so many compliances out there to follow. If you're out of compliance, there's fees. Then there's also going to be time to upgrade. It's better to act now and get prepared. Have somebody do an audit, go over your security policies, what is required before you're too late. If you procrastinate, you can end up with big fines.
That's a great point, right? So fines are going to add to the CapEx problem that is presented, and that's something I wanted to point back to you, Steve. This is something where CapEx is more of an issue, I think, in my opinion, on this one than our typical upgrade from 4.0 to 2000 and 2000 to 2003. There were paths, even to 2008, but things are different now, right? There's some major architectural requirements for 2012 that make this an interesting path for upgrade for most of our IT groups, doesn't it?
And just to reinforce, we want to make sure we get this started soon because, as you're pointing out, Windows Server 2003 could operate in either a 32 or 64-bit model. In other words, you could support both types of hardware. But there are a lot of servers. I think it's 8 million servers worldwide, US alone, running Windows Server 2003, and a lot of those are on 32-bit hardware. So as a CapEx expense, you're not just looking at the new version of the operating system and the effort to install that. You're also looking at new hardware because you're going to need to move to 64-bit hardware to run Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2. So that just increases that expense of transition, and you really want to get that started early because you want to get the right hardware, you want to have the right vetting process to make sure your applications and your device drivers all work with the new 64-bit operating system that you put in that environment.
Planning, then,
Absolutely,
is very important on this one. It's much more important from what I'm hearing is several pieces, right? Not just your typical, we want to plan it for our IT infrastructure environment from a project management perspective, but there are some financial implications that we might want to start discussions with our internal groups on how we're going to make an investment in the infrastructure in order to get this to work. Because we are facing a real wall here of concern. If you're not regulated and you still feel like you can stretch this, keep in mind, Carrie's point, 37 updates in a little more than half the year. That's 0 updates in the same amount of time this time next year. So really, we need to think about some of the things that are going to sort of be the catalyst to this. And what we don't want to do is take something I think all of our guests would agree is a much more complex problem than we've seen in the past and then procrastinate this because we're facing a financial discussion and we're also facing an infrastructure discussion where we may want to take advantage of some of the virtualization because we are facing a tipping point now, right? Server virtualization is becoming much more viable now. If you're going to invest in your infrastructure, that's something you want to take a look at. Hyper-V, I think, is definitely a good option for this. There's also another piece, though, right? Because we're dealing with the financial piece, Steve, and maybe you could touch on how Microsoft and their product offerings in the cloud can offer some CapEx relief.
And so that's the where do we want to go from here? Right. You know, we've done the discovery process to determine what we've got running on our current servers. We've assessed what we want to keep and what we want to get rid of and what we want to update. Now what we need to do is decide where do we want to go. And Microsoft really sees the where do I want to go conversation in going 3 different places. In other words, right now I'm running Windows Server 2003 on premises, and I want to keep my services on premises. I like that model. We're going to need to do the new hardware investments and the new vetting of applications, but we can go from Windows Server 2003 to Windows Server 2012. As you pointed out, virtualization is going to help me leverage my hardware investments, extend them even further. So virtualization, we want to make sure that plays a role in that. But it's what I call a physical-to-physical migration, and it's absolutely one of our supported scenarios. Our second supported scenario, though, is one in which I look at everything and I say, you know, email is really essential to my organization. I love email, but frankly, it's become a commodity. Everybody can do email, and so maybe the email thing, maybe I should just let the cloud handle the email thing. I still want my line of business solution kept on premises because it's really unique and it's really important to my business. I want to keep that on premises, but email and document collaboration and maybe even communication, let's move those into the cloud. We call this a hybrid model. And the good news is Microsoft has architected the way we manage our technologies and the way we deploy our technologies and even the way we secure our technologies to support that hybrid model where some things are in the cloud, Office 365, and some things are still on premises for my line of business.
Stephen, those are good points. Let me stop you there, all right? Because I think this takes us to something where a lot of us are seeing this shift. And 2003 really sort of marks an era where we started to shift over. And I'd like to focus for a second on Exchange. Years ago, I had the opportunity and the wonderful experience of running an Exchange server in a 2000 environment. I was not an Exchange admin, so it was the bane of my existence. I was haunted by that server. It was a resource hog, both on the network, on disk I/O. It had to be its own machine. It was also the receiver of most complaints from our users. Yet it was also something that we were using in a small business infrastructure in the past. We had a lot of those. And Carrie, being on the service desk, you're probably a good witness to this. There's been a shift, right? Because number one, Exchange is a hog, right? And it's in several ways. It sucks up all my time and all my resources, and it also is pretty heavy requirement from a performance perspective. You've seen them in the smaller companies, the 50 user, 100 user groups. Then move them over to some of the bigger enterprise where it might make more sense. Are you starting to see a sort of a shift where maybe more and more small IT groups are saying, you know what, let's move that to the cloud anyway?
I am. I see a lot of migrations going on to the clouds. Easier for maintenance, easier on resources, security. Also, easy for us to help manage if they really need it to be managed. It's easier for us to help manage. It's a big difference from being on a physical machine to where you have more opportunities on the cloud basis.
And Steve, to go back to you on this, right? That's the point. We want to maybe take advantage of this to peel off some of the expensive infrastructure investment needs, right?
Exactly, and plus, as part of a side benefit of this, I'm going to get the latest and greatest. It's going to be kept up to date with the latest and greatest. So, if I'm in that compliant industry, or if I have the need for something like data loss prevention or encrypted messaging, all of those capabilities all of a sudden become enabled in my environment as well. By going to the right cloud solution, by going to the Office 365 and the right plan in Office 365. So, yes, absolutely.
There's some management savings then, right? I mean, I can tell you, I'm not lying or exaggerating. I was not a friend with my Exchange server. I was not an Exchange admin. It was sort of something we had to deal with. And for us to have now this opportunity to peel off that piece, it can change the way we may design our infrastructure. So this is an important part of the planning process, and cloud offers a lot of that. So, Steve, we've got a couple minutes here. If you want to just touch on some of the other things we might be able to peel off, easily, right? Let's focus on what are the first things we want to look at because they're easy and they might give us the most return.
Well, I wanted to go ahead and make sure I got that third model because we've covered the physical to physical and the physical to hybrid.
Right.
So I want to make sure we cover the third model, and that's for organizations that say, I'm tired of this rat race of new hardware and new software and upgrades and all of that. I want somebody else to just deal with everything, not just the messaging and the document sharing, but also my line of business solution. And for that, we recommend Microsoft Azure for your line of business. That Azure is designed to work with Office 365. It uses the same security. It can integrate with the SharePoint, and it becomes that full cloud solution. In other words, I have the cloud that's delivering all aspects of my business infrastructure, not just parts of it. And it's something that's it's part of the New World Order that we can offer at whatever level of transition is appropriate for your business.
So, Steve, it's been very helpful to get a lot of this from you, and I want to try to take an opportunity here to wrap this up. Folks, if you're a decision maker for your environment, if you're an influencer or a leader for your environment, it's very important that I think we take this message seriously. This is not a ploy to sell more hardware or more software. This is a real issue that we face. We know when it's coming. Life and business doesn't usually give us the opportunity to see what's going to happen a year from now. So it's very fair for us to start thinking about or rethinking our infrastructure, especially if you're in the small business or medium-sized business category. take a look at some of the things that and some of the options that Vology and Microsoft in their partnership with Vology and some of the hardware vendors that we offer on what we can do to help you achieve your business goals and overcome some of these concerns. And if we have some meaningful conversation and learn about your financial concerns, obviously with some of the technologies that Microsoft can offer us, we can balance out the CapEx and OpEx piece so that we can make this easier. We can create a 3-year plan or a 2-year plan to ease your infrastructure into cloud or hybrid cloud. That's the beauty, is the flexibility of cloud. We can use a lot more of it at the beginning and then edge off of it to reduce, some of the OpEx and reinvest in the infrastructure. There's a lot of options. There's too many. There's a lot of implications. There's too many. So please make sure that you reach out to your Vology account manager. And I will say this. We're going to do another episode. I think we're going to probably try to get Stephen on here. We're going to do a deeper dive. It's going to be much more technical. We'll have Steve, Carrie, maybe another solutions architect. If you have someone that you trust with your IT environment, whether it's a consultant or whether it's an employee, ask them to attend that to learn some of these, some of the things that we're looking at that are either going to be obstacles or even things that can help us out, sort of tips and tricks on how to deal with a lot of this. And you'll be sure to see this hung up on any of our several social media pages where we'll keep you guys abreast of it. But get them over here. Call your Vology account manager. And again, Stephen, thank you so much for coming along. As always, you're very helpful and certainly add a lot of dialogue. And Carrie, you're a hero in the service desk, and you're a hero here. Thanks so much for adding all of your insight and knowledge on the Microsoft side. And to the audience, thanks once again for attending, and we'll see you on the WireSide.